Is your workplace on life support, or maybe you have a toxic boss? One way to remedy the situation is to set boundaries. Take a look.
There are leaders at work, at home, and at play. One thing is sure, no matter how great the vision, a leader can only get things done with and through the people they lead. Dr. Henry Cloud is a clinical psychologist and best-selling author. He says that as a leader, sometimes you get results, and sometimes you don't. In his book, Boundaries for Leaders, Dr. Cloud shares how his 7 leadership boundaries work, so you can create the kind of place where people can and will be their best.
Please welcome to the 700 Club, Dr. Henry Cloud. It's great to have you back.
It's good to be here.
Well, your first blockbuster book, Boundaries, set a lot of people free just in helping them get their lives and their minds and their circumstances, their relationships in order. What led you to Boundaries for Leaders?
Well, you know, after the first Boundaries books, people wanted them contextualized, like in marriage and in child rearing, et cetera, et cetera. And I do a lot of work with CEOs and executive teams and companies, and the boundaries principles were so important in business, both for the culture of an organization or a team as well as the results, that finally just decided to write it all down.
You say that you use the term leaders being ridiculously in charge. What do you mean by that?
Well, it came from a conversation I had with the CEO who was describing some things going on with his team and his culture. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, it's because we hired this guy from, and I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, it's because it, and finally he just looked up at me and said, I guess I am ridiculously in charge, huh? And he got it. And see, that's whether you are leading a home, you know, if you've got to get a bunch of kids ready for school, you are a leader. You know, to move them from A to Z, or to move a team in a company to reach a sales goal, you've got to move a group of people from here to here. And to do that, you've got to realize that you are ridiculously in charge of whatever you're the steward over, and whatever results you're getting, and here's the big wake-up call, whatever results you're getting, you're either creating those or you're allowing them.
Well, expand on that a little bit and explain why some people are so successful at leading and others don't get the results they want.
Well, it is the question, right? And when you look at, you know, again, this goes to parenting or running a company, that pretty much everybody does the same thing, right? You've got an envisioned future, you know what you want to have happen, you got a goal, you engage the talent to move them down there, you've got a plan of execution, you hold them accountable, and then some people do that and get results and others don't. And when we really begin to look at it, and here's the message of the book, the people that get results are leading people in ways that the people's brains can actually follow them. The book is basically about neuroscience, and the way the brain is created, it is designed to get from A to Z with some certain kinds of ingredients present. And when people are leading in ways that employees or friends or church groups or even families can't follow them, not only do you get ADD kids, but you can get ADD teams and organizations.
So how do you do that? Because whether it's a family or a workplace, people are all different. I mean, even within my own household, every one of my children are uniquely different. So how do I express the plan, well, the goal, the action for so many different ways of thinking?
It's a good point, and that's where leaders get confused, but let me tell you where no one is different than anybody else. For us to get any kind of goal from here to there, whether it's driving your car to 7-Eleven, your brain basically has to do 3 things. They're called the executive functions. It's got to attend to what is relevant. You got to know what lane you're in, where the traffic is. You've got to shut out or inhibit everything else, so you can't be texting or watching a video. And the third thing is, it's got to keep a working memory, so you've got to stay in a flow. I can't just drop you out of a time machine because you don't know what you just did and you don't know what to do next. So if you're organizing children, or if you're organizing a team or a sales force or even an entire company, that is what you continually have to do. You've got to make sure everybody knows what's important. You shut out everything else. Remember, if everything's important, nothing is.
Yeah.
So you've got to make the distinction and keep what's important in front of their brains. And you got to do it with some continuity. I'll give you a great example. When Steve Jobs went back to Apple, Apple barely had a pulse, right? A few geeks and a cult. And he's walking around the halls, and there were like, 30-something versions of the Macintosh. And he goes, this is crazy. If I want to tell my nephew to buy one, which one do I tell him to buy? So he goes into a room and he says, look, this is nuts. Here's what we're going to do. He drew a box with 4 quadrants. He put personal and professional at the top, desktop and portable down the sides, and he said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make 4 computers, and that's it. And if you go into an Apple store today, that's what you find. And that's what great leaders do. Again, whether you're getting kids ready for school or running, one of the biggest, most successful companies in the world, the brain has to work in a certain way. And when we're confusing people by making too many things important and not keeping it current, then it's not going to work.
But you also talk about the significance, and I'm big for this, of creating unity in organizations. How do you do that?
Well, a couple of ways. First of all, we do unify around a purpose. Without a vision, the people perish, right? And so that's the first part of it. But another part of it actually comes from the emotional climate that somebody is creating. It's fascinating that when anybody is trying to motivate somebody by getting mad, I told you to do this, what are you,
Yes.
And when we're amping up, here's what's interesting. You basically have 2 brains. You got a higher brain where all the good stuff lives, like problem solving and creativity and finishing things and all that. But when we're under threat, that brain actually begins to shut down, and the fight or flight brain begins to wake up. And so when you're threatening somebody or you're trying to get them to do it in anger or fear or like a toxic boss, their brain is actually shutting down to be able to do what you're wanting them to do.
So you get the opposite.
They're going to fight or flight. So what does that mean? They're going to resist you either passively or actively, or they're sending their resume out, or at least their heart is flighting. So you see somebody nodding on the outside, but they're going away on the inside. We don't get results by threatening people. You might get instant kind of like, okay, a salute, but not, especially kids.
There's so much in here. Boundaries for Leaders is for all of us. Why some people get results and others don't. You want to get a hold of this. It's great for your family, great for your business, great for your church. It's available wherever books are sold.
Send it to your boss.
There you go. Happy Bosses Day. Thank you. It's so great to have you.
It's always good to be here.
Thanks, Henry.